Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Riding the Wave. I'm John Schilling, and I am the community editor with The Wave, Rockaway's newspaper since 1893. And as a part of our Leading Up to Election Day series, we're joined today by New York State Assemblywoman Stacey Pheffer Amato. Hi, Assemblywoman. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Thank you.
Of course. And, like I just said a little earlier, I know that your time is valuable and my time is valuable. So we're going to just jump right into questions and give you a chance to respond. But I want to start off just sort of on a light note. How has your campaign for re-election been going so far? What are some things that you've been hearing from constituents as you've been out there, so to speak, on the campaign trail? And is there anything different this time around compared to 2022?
I love the campaign trail. I love being out in this community. This is the best community from, I know we're doing this recording for the Rockaway paper, but, Ozone Park down to the Rockaways, it is a good time. This community tells you exactly how they feel and let you know what's on their mind, and positive and negative. So that part is something I enjoy. I enjoy retail politics in that sense, and being in the trenches with the folks. I think I've been as consistent and standing from the day I was elected. It's always been about the people. It's about the people's concern. It's addressing one constituent concern at a time. So in the campaign, I would say it's the same thing. It's people powered, volunteer powered. We have tons of volunteers out there knocking on doors with me. I've been out knocking on doors throughout this district for weeks and months, and in between my let's remember, I'm the Assemblywoman, so that job comes first. I'm elected by the people and I represent them. So my time on the trail has been in between weekends, nights, mornings, phone calling, wherever I can get it in. I'm reaching out to constituency. We're endorsed by every labor union out there, law enforcement. So we have tons of volunteers from carpenters to police unions supporting this campaign. So I'm pumped. I love it.
Now, Assemblywoman, it's certainly no secret that your re-election in 2022 was a bit of a bumpy road, right? On election night, Tom Sullivan, your opponent, had a lead in the votes, and what followed was a 2-month, legal battle to count votes that had been invalidated by the Board of Elections for various reasons. Now, ultimately, you came out on top with a 15-vote lead. And so with that in mind, as well as the fact that you have the presidential race on the top of the ballot, is there any additional pressure that you and the campaign are feeling this time around, and how are you managing that?
I don't see it as pressure. If you're doing what you're doing, you're representing people. We deal with legislation, and I have thousands and thousands of people who write to me, and we respond back in that sense. So if we're getting the word out and the work that we're doing, I feel that supports us. The close election, if you want to, say that, hasn't changed anything that we're doing. We work hard, we represent people, and we bring the issues to Albany and back home. Winning the election was important to show that every vote matters and you count every vote, and that there was definitely places that you could see votes maybe didn't come out. I'm the only Democrat and / independent that won on the ticket, right? Everyone else. So people know who I am. They know what I stand for. And I don't know if the other races affect as much. As far as the presidential, I'm very proud. As you know, we recounted by hand 32,000 ballots. And I'm proud to see that people voted for a Republican potential governor and then came down to me on a Democratic line or an independent line. So that's an educated voter base. And I'm proud to represent voters that are educated. They know who I am and what I stand for.
Yeah, now, Assemblywoman, I asked the question only because, we spoke earlier this year, and you said you weren't feeling nervous. There wasn't pressure. You were feeling confident because your office has done the work. And, instead of me asking you about different pieces of legislation that you've introduced or passed, can you highlight for the viewers at home just a few of them, perhaps the ones that you're most proud of from over the last term, and, the impact on the Rockaway community that they will have?
So I have to say as you reported, I was appointed chair of the governmental employees right after that election in 2022. So if you want to talk about the job, being the state legislator, that work, which is different because we take every concern in the office, like you're mentioning, and I'll move. But we
Sure.
answer everyone. If it's city, federal, we work with all of our agency and partners. But if you want to talk about something, we revised or amended, changed the pension system for Tier 6. So any new city or state worker that's coming in and we are short on our public service workers within the state and the city. We changed the tier system. We are working closely to do recruitment and retention issues throughout the city. And I would say changing tier 6, the pension plan, and starting those changes, we're on 2, to make more parity to other pensions, is some of the best work, because that is helping the recruitment effort. More teachers, more police, more fire, more state workers upstate, correction officers. We've heard from every union that that was one of the #1 requests for recruiting new workers, and we're working on that. So that is a great victory. Personally, I would say working with a very delicate group of women and even some men in working on my flat closure bill, that post-mastectomy cancer bill, that we are the first out of the 50 states. It's precedented. It was unprecedented, I should say. And now other states are going to copy it, that women have autonomy over their body in post mastectomy care. Instead of, you could choose reconstructive breast or flat closure, and insurance must cover it. Before that, insurance didn't cover it. And I've had people from all walks of life in every part of the state who reached out to us to thank us for that legislation, that we've increased, I think, nationally, like 65% more women are asking about flat closure and opportunities to get that done. And I think as a woman, that's one of the greatest things that I could have done. And our state is the first.
Now, mentioning the tier 6, and, one of the biggest critiques that you have faced, and something that you've previously addressed, is bail reform, right? In 2019, you voted in favor of a state budget package that included legislation to adopt no cash bail. Now, just recently, New York City Councilwoman Joanne Ariola, while speaking at a rally for your opponent, said that you should have voted no out of principle. And she did acknowledge the legislation that you've passed to benefit the NYPD and other city workers. She specifically mentioned the benefits for widows and widowers, but she said, and I quote, "She created those widows and widowers." Now, of course, the most recent example that hits close to home is the murder of Detective Jonathan Diller, who was killed by a career criminal, and his accomplice was also a career criminal. So with that in mind, my question for you is twofold. How do you respond to the councilwoman's characterization of your record? And do you feel as if you bear some responsibility for those tragedies because of that vote?
Absolutely bear no responsibility for those tragedies. That's insulting right now to even say that. I have every law enforcement union is supporting me. Would they support me if they thought that I had any responsibility or I'll say again, responsibility towards those issues? I think everyone should question why my opponent is not getting those endorsements. You know what I mean? Everyone can talk about common sense, and well, common sense is saying if these unions and the men and women on the forces throughout our state are endorsing me, they know that I'm the strongest voice in Albany for our law enforcement. Let me just get that off my chest. And second of all, I don't care what the councilwoman has to say. She's a minority member of the city council who can't get legislation passed to even benefit any one of those folks. So bail reform, yes, was a budget package that was about criminal justice reform, that people who had opportunity to or committed a crime was innocent before proven guilty, who were sent in jail. And did it go sideways? Yes. Did we change it immediately 3 months later? Absolutely. And 3 times we've amended the laws to bail reform. I just had a conversation yesterday with someone said, why is there no cash bail? There is still a bail system in New York State. Have a weapon, have certain crimes, there is bail. What we took away, and I don't agree with it, which we've amended back, is that someone who maybe had their first crime, like someone in this building that I live, had an issue, and it was their first selling marijuana, getting caught, all these not federal crimes, state crimes, and it was their first opportunity. They didn't get thrown in jail. They go back to court. They have to see a judge, and they get the violation. If it's a fine, a amount of money, if there's small time served, time served. So the criminal system has to work. It needed revising. Did it go too far? Absolutely, and I've said it, and I've worked on pushing it back. But let me tell you something, John, I'm at the table. So when my colleagues, who I do go at all the time in the Democratic Party, because the only people talking about this at a caucus is the Democrats who wanted, If someone had a gun 3 times, there should be no bail. 2 times. So you're at the table pushing back. My moderate conservative voice is sitting there fighting back on very extreme left voices. And you push back and you get to a moderate bill. But everyone else, my opponent, is never even going to get an opportunity to fight back. And I'm tired of everyone sort of making like, Albany is not City Hall. Let me say this again. Albany is not City Hall. So what happens to us, the Democrats caucus, and no one else is invited in. So when you're sitting there fighting back going, no, we must have bail if someone has a weapon. You must have, what's it called? Metal detectors in schools. These are the voices of a few of us that push back and push the laws to be more fair. You have to have that moderate base. That's why, I even call myself, I'm a painfully in the middle Democrat, or am I really more a little sometimes this way leaning when it comes to fiscal conservancy? But those laws have been revised. And are there issues in other boroughs? And I say this at every meeting. Queens has it going on. Melinda Katz is the best district attorney out of all the boroughs. She works with all of us when there's issues that are going on. If someone's a repetitive criminal and I call and say, are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? But right now we're fighting our judges and our district attorneys in other boroughs who are just letting out and using their discretion, which they always had. And they push back on it. And now they're using that discretion, which they've always had. And that's the problem. So we're looking at judges to go to schools and really understand the law, to really these newer judges, and district attorneys to make sure they give the highest level of prosecution, pinning that crime onto the case. And then that leads into the judge. But in Manhattan, I'm disturbed by everything I'm seeing out of Alvin Bragg's and in the Bronx and in Brooklyn. That is disturbing me to no end. That is the conversations we're having with the Association of District Attorneys and pushing to say these repetitive crimes. And look what we just did. We just fixed retail theft. And we're getting there to tackle those issues that are really, if you want to talk about an issue that everyone talks about, is retail theft. But I'm not going to listen to City Hall and what they have to say in spaces. They can't make one change.
Right. And, the reason I only bring up the question is because if these things are being said, I think it's only right that you are able to respond to it. So I hope you can appreciate that.
John, I respond. Let me just say to you, we
Sure.
have 24 mobile offices. I put myself in the middle of every community, and people come up to me with the same concerns, and we have the conversations. We have the conversations. I'm knocking on doors. We're talking about it. But hits like that, to say things without the full story, stay in your lane.
Right. I understand. Absolutely. And, on the topic of your mobile office and just your staff in general, I will always just say right here on the record that your staff has always been very accessible and very helpful to me. So shout out to Greg, Jason, Irene, Jeanette, Maggie, and of course your husband, Frank. I know he's not your on staff, but I always enjoy talking to him when I run into him. So just wanted to put that out there.
Well, that's a community where, we're here, we live here, born and raised on this peninsula. I hope to age in place right where I'm sitting right now, and happy to do it.
Absolutely. Now, keeping the conversation going, another thing I want to bring up is the migrant base camp across the bridge at Floyd Bennett Field. So at the first rally in opposition, when it had been rumored that it was a possibility, you got up on stage and you encouraged the boos. You told people, boo Governor Hochul. You said, and you also said, if for some reason you think that I support it, that's a problem because I don't support any of what's going on right now. And of course, what followed was the unsuccessful lawsuit against the city and state, which you were named on, and some of the instances of migrants panhandling or trespassing, not just in Rockaway, but across the city. Looking at that entire situation a year later, what are your thoughts on how the city and state has handled the migrant crisis? And what are some of the things that you and your office have done to address what's going on at Floyd Bennett Field? I understand it's outside of the district, but also just, its close proximity to the Rockaway Peninsula. Wanted to just put that question out there to you.
Yeah, no, I'm going to answer with my instinctual half full, because we've been doing this for a year now. And I thank you for noting that I don't support any of it. I don't think we're doing a good job. The challenges are there, the amount of people on our city, burdening our city, our services, and everything that we stood a year ago is still happening. I voted no against the $2.4 billion that the governor sent down to further pay for that lease and all the services. But at the same time, Do we let the city go broke? Because we're carrying the bill. So the state in our budget and throughout New York State, because let's remember we bought a Canada. So a lot of the money that's provided in the state budget goes to all the other counties. New York is self-sufficient. It's not like other counties, but there's, Onondaga County, Buffalo, the border, Plattsburgh, the Canadian border, there's migrants and other folks coming from all over into our state, and we give money to CBOs because small communities can't handle a lot of these social services. But we're not handling it well, and it shouldn't be on our backs. And every elected official, every candidate has said it's a federal problem, and they're failing us. There's no clear immigration path to become a citizen. We all talk about the people we know who have paying tax ID numbers. They're out there, they're working, they pay taxes, but they can't get a green card. They can't get legal residency here. So they're the first layer that should be taken care of and become people. I know folks very well who have children born here, came here, paying taxes. There's a lot of that. Then there's the next layer of the people who are coming, who are asylum seekers, people who are eligible to work. Okay, so we know all the different people, but it's a burden. Closing Randall's Island made me happy because that is a horrible, they're closing it down. There's less migrants coming here. In all the reports, we speak constantly, probably bi-weekly, every other week, I speak to Dr. Ted from Health and Hospitals, who are the main agency running the migrant shelter in Floyd Bennett Field, and every elected official has access to the same information. It is the best run shelter they have. They have the least amount of anything, crime, it's families, disease, anything that, all the fear that's out there, they're bringing diseases, they're not vetted, and all the issues that happened in the beginning, illegal bikes, there's sweeps going on, cars, all of that stuff has been contained. So out of this horrible situation that the city is bearing a burden, we are fortunate to have the best run migrant shelter. At the same token, where everyone was worried about the invasion happening, lack of a better word saying, in our beaches and coming over the bridges and 10 miles to the Howard Beach community, there is some begging and stuff going on in front of schools with children, and we take care of that the minute we get a call. But overall, there has not been a problem burdening our community. It's this value and the perception of this, which shouldn't be happening to us. Our city should be flourishing in its area to spend the money on the taxpayers and putting into our schools. Our infrastructure needs the money, not working on a lease and not paying for these services. But I'm still totally opposed to the inhumane shelter that is at migrant, that is at Floyd Bennett Field, that migrant shelter. I've stuck to that it is inhumane for anybody to live in a shelter. We are sitting here in a flood zone. Every time there's something that's happening, we all go, what's going to happen there? Because as you know, the folks were shifted over during one bad storm. But that money, the money we're spending in this crisis that should be federally provided to us somehow, should be going to our infrastructure. I have flooding and areas that need big infrastructure changes, which is on the city of New York, that responsibility. Hopefully the state can come through with some funding, but the city has to focus on its infrastructure for the flooding that goes on to different pockets within the 23rd. And that's where I want my money to go.
And Assemblywoman, just for clarity, do you support the idea of repealing New York's sanctuary state status?
So New York City is a sanctuary city, right? We all agree to that? Great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the city council could repeal that. The mayor's wanted it, but the city council doesn't want to do it. Okay. So the majority members, of course, because the common sense caucus can't do anything. They could just speak. Okay. On the state, there was an executive order passed by Governor Cuomo to make us have certain things that don't let ICE to have ICE interfere, federal law enforcement interfere. We're not a sanctuary state. There's no legislation in front of me that says we could declare or make a sanctuary state. We're not a sanctuary state. There was an executive order that declared it that we don't want the federal government coming in to intercede if there's someone arrested. We wanted to leave it to local authorities. You're innocent to proven guilty. If you break the law, you're kept in jail. There's a difference between an executive order and a law. The city is functioning on a law, And we have an executive order that's stopping federal law enforcement from getting involved in state and localities arresting individuals that break the law. I believe if anybody who breaks the law should be held responsible for that. Then we could, that's a later conversation, but that's where the executive order came in. Now you're going to ask me if Kathy Hochul, right? Come on, go on.
No, I have a different question.
Well, okay, well, the governor, so there is legislation out there that talks about this, but it's not, I don't put my name on anything that is not of value to pass through the assembly. So a Democratic Assemblywoman and a Republican senator has a bill, it's not going to happen. We are a majority run system on the state level. I've been exploring legislation with my colleagues who are in the Buffalo, Plattsburgh, for areas that we can have stricter restrictions on people who are arrested. I have tons of legislation that I share on, and that's where we stand. Until a law is put in front of me that I could read and vet, this is where I stand. But nothing has been presented to me ever.
Right. And I don't want to belabor this topic, but just one last question, just for clarity. You mentioned that you voted against the $2 billion in aid going to the migrants. I know I saw your recent commercial and I read the legislation, but something that your critics have pointed out, and again, when we talk about rhetoric, as you mentioned before, you voted in favor of a bill to expand aid for higher education to undocumented children in 2019. So aside from the fact that these votes were 5 years apart, what was your reasoning behind each of these votes? What were the different circumstances?
Did you read the law for the Dreamer Act?
No.
Okay, so the Dreamer Act is a law that says that non-documented dreamers, which are children of family came here, they migrated here, they came for asylum seeking, those children didn't know, had no choice, and they want to go to college. We created, it's a private firm, because we changed the SUNY law, it had to be a law. There is no state, there's no tax dollars in that bill. It's a privately funded account or process. There's no tax dollars in it. It's going to be privately funded. But because we created it for SUNY, it had to be a law. We had to legislate and put in statute that this exists so that that money that goes into the account can be used for tuition. There is not one dime of taxpayer dollars that are paying for non-documented people to go to college in state colleges, period. So that is the opportunity for private funding to go in. That's all we did. We created a fund, period. No tax dollars are being spent on non-documented children, on non-citizens, whatever, however you want to refer it, and all the rhetoric, like you say. What do we call people? Yep.
Fair enough. Now, Assemblywoman, you said earlier, and I'm paraphrasing here, shifting to a completely different topic, building a trauma center in Far Rockaway, that the baton has been passed, and that it's now on you, Assemblyman Anderson, Senator Sanders, to sort of meet with the governor and advocate on behalf of your shared constituency and sort of continue that conversation. What can you tell us about those conversations, what you anticipate, when will they happen, and the message that you're going to bring to the governor to make sure that the trauma hospital becomes a reality?
You know, we've had great success when we talk about our safety net hospital, which is St. John's, where we were able to change like the Medicare rate. So it's like 87% Medicare, Medicaid patients. You know, so we've had success when we bring that issue for this community and the needs, the lack of access to a hospital, and we were able to help get more dollars into the hospital to fund it. They're doing beautiful, bringing healthcare across the community. But the trauma center, when we talked about all three of us getting together, is something we have to bring to DOH to get the authorization. We're planning to get together. We have not. We were happy to celebrate the success of Sylvina Brooks Power and the task force that we're on, for her getting that big chunk of money out of the mayor's office and from their budget to get that, sort of validating the conversation. We all just mentioned, to each other, and I mentioned to a few people in the executive that we're going to start our conversations. We need to talk about DOH. I also said in the same breath that I need to talk about Jamaica Bay, a bill that, we have a few months before, to see what happens to it. So we're advocating on the bills that are in front of us. But when I get back to Albany in January, that will be our priority. We're going to have a couple of conversations, I believe, before to see if there's, governor's crafting her state to the state. They're working on their budget, and that's what we start doing now, the last quarter of the year. And we're just having, mentions of conversation. But we feel good about our relationship as state legislators to bring this conversation to the Department of Health. It will be our priority, 100% to get that authorization, which is first, and then you fight for the money. It's really, we're in a really good place. I feel that the dial's moving a little bit, and it's little steps, but it's the first time we've had this momentum that we could bring. I feel good that I have an opportunity to bring this conversation to the state issues and to the state departments.
Now, Assemblywoman, to address another specific, as you're aware, there's been recent upticks in animal sacrifices and other suspicious activity in areas of Broad Channel, Howard Beach, Hamilton Beach. And I know you and the councilwoman just had a recent walkthrough with Congressman Meeks around some of those areas. But, what is the current update on the situation as far as you're aware? And, what can you do on the state level to address this ongoing problem?
Well, I was very grateful that the congressman came out. He really was planning it later on in December. And I called, spoke with him and said, this is, dire. You need to come out here and see firsthand and just walk through as you're advocating and fighting for money on the federal level for these national parks. And so I was glad that he responded to me and came sooner than later, because I think we need to get the immediate to understand how, he knows his district, but to really see it and walk through and talk to the national parks people on the ground in where we see we need the care. There's two sides of it. There's the animal sacrifices and the concerns of the not neighborly behavior that's happening, one in the pollution and what's happening to the animals. It's disgusting to think that someone would do that to any animal, that's for sure. And everyone is on record for that. But the fact that these are federal parks in the city of New York attached, and they look like crap. And we have an issue that I have state dollars that I can never funnel into the federal parks. It's very difficult. We're still working on that. We think we might find one way to do it. But if I have $1 million and I want to put into Charles Park, the federal government doesn't take it. We're having an issue with the camera right now. So we really need him to see, when he's fighting with appropriations and putting that money in, to get it in our federal parks, specifically down here in the city, in the 3 parks that I'm fortunate to have and all the areas that surround it. So that was important for him to come. The other part for him that we didn't speak to in the walkthrough, wasn't specific. His walkthrough was really about where funding needs to go. But our conversation was about the animal sacrifices and enforcement on the ground. Even though we have a designated federal enforcement within our area, we really need to increase that and talk about the amount of people since post-COVID have discovered our beautiful Jamaica Bay, coming to all the access points, the legal ones, and supporting that. If it's trash enforcement, ambassadors talking about how to handle the park, the same way enforcement to catch the people who are doing these horrific acts to animals. And that balance of getting, that's a different dollar than capital investment opposed to personnel and getting more. We have these great rescuers groups that are out there in the middle of the night. I follow all their pages to see who's going out and trying to catch these really awful human beings. But then there's an educational part of leaving statues and information. But there's a lot of pollution also. There has to be more of a ambassadorship on the ground and a bigger way of catching the garbage, not leaving a trace. We've done it, but there needs to be a bigger spread across. Spring Creek, which is out of the Rockaway district, is actually closed to contaminants, and people are going in there. How are we allowing it to happen? So we need more people on the ground in these parks that have no borders, no walls. They're open for people to enjoy, but they have to respect our community. If not, that enforcement has to be done, which is a partnership with NYPD and enforcement. But on a daily basis, it's really enforcement. But I think that it's great that I made an idea, I put it out there, and everyone seems to be jumping on it, to designate ourselves as a separate area within the federal parks. We do have an area that comes out to us that covers our parks with Brooklyn. But we really need, from Spring Creek Hamilton Beach Park, Charles Park, and then on the north side of the North Channel Bridge, like the kite launch, let's call it. And that has to be a separate district to have its district, to have its own focus, planning, separate, and its own money, its own budget to keep that concentration. We're getting different. You know, people talk about Canarsie Piers. It's different. It's piers people fish off it. People are landing here all day, parking, picnicking, and that was it. I announced that at that rally to protect the animals and stop the sacrifices, that we should have our own area. And that's what I advocated also to the federal officials and the congressman. But we have to stop it. So I just want to say we have to stop what's going on there in the sacrifices. It's
Absolutely, yeah. Now, Assemblywoman, while we're on the topic, or I should say within the vicinity of Broad Channel, one of the things that's been going on recently that the Civic has brought up is concerns about speeding and red light running. I understand that this might fall to DOT in some respect, but is there anything that can be done to address this on the state level? Like, would you be in favor of Governor Hochul becoming more involved, maybe getting the state troopers involved? And have you had any conversations with the Civic about this particular issue?
I speak with the Civic all the time. I mean, that is an issue we've heard. I stood there on the lights by the park, by the library, and watched as we're sitting there with 2 police officers, DOT, and watch people go through the light. So let's just say something clearly. You can't legislate consciousness. You can't legislate for someone to do the right thing, but we should catch them and they should be fine. However, when the mayor put forward his proposals to add more speed cameras, let's just say this out loud, more speed cameras, more red light cameras, I can hear the district right now screaming, no way, no more speed cameras, no red lights, no way. You've heard it yourself, you've covered it, right? Yeah. I said only if I could tell you specifically in my district where I need more. Nope, can't do that. So you want me to prove 200 more red light cameras, but I can't guarantee that one's in my district, that I can't put 3 more red light cameras within Broad Channel. Nope. Screw you. I'm voting no. I'm not supporting that issue. I'm not doing it. Right? I mean, that's the funny part about government. We want something, but we can't micro down. The agency wants to have control. It's the city issue. They're going to have to fight on the city level to specifically start nailing into, you know, baking into the legislation specifically that district gets certain amount of cameras, that certain districts, but they want a blanket check. And then I don't get what I want from my district. So I won't, I mean, that's a problem. But the fact that people go through red lights in front of a library where children cross for school is unacceptable. So we've worked with the precinct specifically on how to catch individuals, have that. The troopers will come there again, but you're talking about sitting there all day and hoping to catch somebody. They will. They've been having more cars. Trust me, I get phone calls. Why are the troopers in the bird sanctuary? This is what you've asked for. You've asked for safety along Cross Bay Boulevard. We have some added, you know, when the school got back up, the cameras come back on. People have slowed down. They've said that the speed limits people have slowed down. But the more you put on, the more people concerned. So it's a delicate balance. But it is a big issue. It's probably something more door to door or something that we have to actually catch before people go into Broad Channel either way to say, be careful, you're going to get caught speeding. But how many people do you know, John, that said they got that speeding camera ticket and they not speeding anymore through Seagirt Boulevard or through certain places? But it's a delicate balance, but we're not getting exactly what we need to handle it. It has to be something that constantly rolls to catch the people that go around the folks. It's a big issue. It's a hard one to solve, but I'm on it. We do everything, any idea that comes through. I would say the DOT Queens partners have been thinking, you know, but everyone's putting their thinking caps on of out of the box stuff. And that's what we're trying to do now. But specifically, if there's something I can invest in, as I said to you, I do get capital dollars. And if they say we have a great idea, we could do this, this, and this, and I could put my capital dollars in it, I'm happy to do it. That's what we've been watching and waiting to see. We do get the ability to put capital money into the community.
And, you know, Assemblywoman, as the end of our time draws near, I just have one last question. We had reached out to you over the summer about the possibility of debating your opponent, Tom Sullivan. You seemed open to the idea when we spoke earlier this year, but you ultimately decided not to participate in the debate. On a personal level, I was disappointed by the decision only because I thought it would be a great venue for you to answer questions submitted by your constituents and defend your record. So my question for you is twofold. One, why did you decide not to debate your opponent? And two, do you feel, as some people have voiced, do you feel that incumbents have an obligation to their constituents to debate their opponents?
So as you said yourself, I do over 24 mobile office hours. I'm out in the community. Everyone can answer their questions. They're accessible. That's being civically engaged. In addition, every civic meeting that we attend, 6 months a year, I'm in Albany. Let's make sure everyone, someone actually asked, why weren't you at the meeting? Because I was in Albany. I actually have to go other places as the chair of a committee. We are state legislators. So every community, as tonight, there's civic meetings that are having candidates nights as they choose. So we are happily engaging there. But I'm going to throw something back to you that we haven't shared. It was thrown out in the wave. People want us to debate. Call Stacey's office. Call my government office twice, right? My opponents did it. I think the city councilwoman did it. Debate. Ask me how many people called my office and asked me to debate.
How many?
0. Oh, 2 people called the office. 2 people called the office, I believe, to say to debate. But I would say we probably had, when we put out legislation about Tier 6, we probably had 1,000 people all through Albany calling us to pass Tier 6 from this district. When there was partially other funding, when they thought that when Breezy Point needed protection in the Bay, there was an issue going on about protecting Breezy Point. We need protection. Thousands. I can get the exact numbers. So when people want me to know what they want me to do, they call my office. Absolutely. We don't hesitate. I mean, we're proud of the constituent services we have, but actually no one reached out and thought that was a great idea. So I made a decision. I think myself, I don't talk about anybody else. I'm out in the community all the time. I'm in throughout Ozone Park, Howard Beach. I know everyone loves to say that. I'm in living rooms, backyards. I look at issues. So, yep, I see that. So,
Yeah,
I made a decision.
I get it. Listen, I just want to thank you publicly before the recording cuts off for taking some time to sit with me, answer some questions. Best of luck on Election Day, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon, Assemblywoman.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you greatly. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you. Take care.